The Asheville-Buncombe County League of Women Voters presents the 2011 Asheville City Council Candidate Forum.
All right, I think we're ready to start with the opening statements. Mr. Perry, will you start, please?
Pelly? Sure. Chris Pelly. Thank you. And thank you to the League for hosting this event tonight. As a past candidate, I can tell you that the League event is a highlight of the campaign season. You all do a great job with this, and I appreciate you doing it again tonight. I am Chris Pelly. I am a 21-year resident of Asheville. My wife, Juanita Igo, is sitting back here, and my son, Gabriel, is here. I have two other grown daughters that are living out of the area, and my mother-in-law, Louise, is here too. As I said, we've lived in Asheville for 21 years. I'm a lifelong Democrat. All three of my children have graduated from public schools in either Asheville City or Buncombe County. With the last one, Gabriel, he's home for fall break, but he left for college in August, and so it's opened up a little bit of room in our lives to be able to serve. For professionally, I've been a real estate broker with Keller Williams for about 15 years here in town, and in that capacity, I believe I've been on every street in the city of Asheville, and really feel like I know the community from that standpoint as well, and know how important it is that we've got something special here and that we need to be working to protect our quality of life here. So a little bit about my biography, but what makes me qualified to serve on Asheville City Council? And I believe it is a record of accomplishment serving in my neighborhood in East Asheville, where I've helped lead efforts that have resulted in 2 new parks, new sidewalks for the community, that are real quantifiable improvements to the quality of life there. But I think equally important, what I have tried to do in my leadership capacity is also to instill a sense of working together with the community. And I think if you talk to your friends and neighbors in East Asheville, you'll get that. You'll hear from them that there's a real community identity there because people have worked together. And these improvements, the parks and the sidewalks, involve literally hundreds of residents working together, whether it is going to city council meetings or fundraising or marching on Tunnel Road. But the level of ownership in the community is high because people work together. And that's the leadership I've tried to bring in there, and that's the leadership I'll try to bring on city council. And I think it's also important to talk about, when we did Masters Park, this was an idea, and we've taken it to fruition. Same thing on Hawk Creek Park. As anybody that's been involved in projects knows that these things can take a long time to pull together, but I've stayed with things from beginning to end there, and the collaborative leadership I've tried to provide there, I think will be of benefit as well on Asheville City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pelly. Now, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Mark Hunt. I live in North Asheville. I've been a volunteer in the community during the 16 years I've lived here. I currently work for Open Space Institute, a land conservation nonprofit. And I'll tell you a little more about myself in a few minutes, but I'd first like to just highlight policy areas that are important to me, and I'll be very brief because I know details will come out through the questions and answers. But I've said through the campaign, environmental responsibility, well-planned growth, affordability, equity, and fairness are key points in my policy stances. And I found through the campaign that the media and these forums do a great job of focusing on policy areas. And so I trust that will come out tonight. I think many of you have probably done your homework and know a bit about me and all the other candidates. But what often doesn't come out as well is some other qualities that relate to the functionality of council and government. I'd like to highlight those as they relate to me. And in order for you to know more about me, I would encourage you to take a look at my bio and my resume on my website. Veronica Gunter back there has some cards that have my bio on there. But I'm going to reference some of my experiences as I talk about this. First of all, and there are 3 key points here. I'm committed to the function of city council as a whole. It's one thing for individual council members to stand for things and to focus on things, but it's really the overall function of council as a team, as a unit. I've got lots of experience in top leadership positions, both at staff levels and on boards for nonprofits and for-profits. I'm an entrepreneur. I have extensive small business experience. And so functionality of leadership groups like boards and appointed and elected bodies is something that is familiar territory for me. It requires communication, trust, leadership, and those are skills that are developed, not easily found. Second, I'm committed to collaboration outside the body that I'm working in or the enterprise I'm in. And for city government, for city council, that means other levels of government, state, county, federal. It also means engagement with the nonprofit community, the for-profit community, grassroots citizens groups. And I've understood and learned sometimes the hard way how important it is that collaboration take place. Finally, skills and talents. Again, my bio will show you that I've got deep organizational leadership experience in a variety of settings. For-profit, nonprofit, some governmental. I also have focused on finance. I'm a career finance person lately, and so accounting, planning, budgeting, financially, especially in the strategic sense, is very familiar to me. So those are three things I hope you will look for as you listen to my answers and see me go forward in the campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutt. Ms. Gray?
Hi, I'm Lael Gray, and some people have trouble pronouncing my name. So I have been explaining to people that actually Lael is the Hebrew word for city councilwoman. So you can just use the English. That'll be fine. I'd like to think that my mother raised me to be sitting here right now. This is very exciting for me to be sitting at such a large turnout for the League of Women Voters. This is an organization that I honestly grew up with from the time that I can remember. My mother has been involved in the League of Women Voters, and so this is really quite cool for me today. So I've spent my life advocating for environmental protection, quality education for all of our children, equal rights for all people, as well as improved race relations in our community. I'm going to bring my experience in business, education, and nonprofit management to the work of City Council. I'm a skilled communicator. I have tremendous experience in budgeting, managing budgets, and strategic planning. And I also have a lot of experience in being a consensus builder. I've served on numerous boards of directors and committees in our community for various nonprofit agencies. And I believe that all of these skills that I've developed will serve me well in the role of a city council member. I'm incredibly driven, and I will work tirelessly to make sure that Asheville achieves the vision that we all have for a sustainable future. I would like to see us continue to make strides in ending bigotry in all of its forms. I also would like to see us take a more active role in taking care of all of the children in our community. And I envision an Asheville where you don't need to own a car in order to get where you need to go. That's thunder. I'm really grateful for all of the support that I've received on this campaign, including being endorsed by the Sierra Club, people advocating for real conservancy. I just found out yesterday that I've also been endorsed by the Asheville Firefighters Association, and I've been endorsed by City Councilwoman Esther Mannheimer, who's here, as well as Cecil Bothwell. And I feel like those endorsements don't come easily, and I'm extremely proud to have been endorsed by all of those organizations and individuals. So I'm thrilled to be applying for the job of City Council, and I hope that you will hire me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Now, Mr. Davis.
I want to thank the League for having us here. It always is one of our very best forums, if not the best forum. So thank you for having us in this room. I'm Councilman Jan Davis, and I have had the good fortune of serving on council for 8 years now. And I think that Probably the hallmark of that 8 years has been that I'm a councilman that listens and works hard to find solutions. And not always do we see eye to eye on issues on council, but we work to find consensus and move the community forward. I think I'm a good model of that. I think that my record speaks for itself. Although you may not like all the votes I've done, I think you'll find that I fairly listen to the issues and very studied on them, and I work diligently and very hard to do council work. I also am a small business owner. I've owned, with my wife Ann, who's in the audience, I have owned a small business downtown for 27 years. I'm an Asheville native, and I care deeply about this community. And I work very hard on my own business, and I work very hard on council. I'm very proud of the accomplishments of the last 8 years. I've had some individual accomplishments that are pretty significant. I think that one of the largest, and I'm fairly well known for, and I'm not a one-issue candidate, but the Asheville Civic Center has been a passion because I was chairman of that commission for a number of years before I was on council. And we recognized that we had to move forward with a building in the community, and I've been able to form the partnerships with the county, Tourism Development Authority, and University of North Carolina at Asheville, in order to, and the city's involvement to bring that building forward using the Southern Conference return as a way of leveraging those funds. And we're right now in the final stage, or the mid stages of refurbishing that building, which will take it long into the future. We'll be very proud of it as a community gathering place. I've also, personally, a little project that I like very much, a hurt part of the community was the Asheville Speedway. When that was removed, I worked very hard to get the funding for and designing and building the memorial that is at Asheville Speedway. It may not affect you if you weren't involved with that racetrack, but it affected a lot of the community and it healed a lot of wounds, and we had great opportunity in bringing people together with that. One of the greatest things with my council mate who's in the room, Mr. Manheimer, we've allowed $5 million in our budget for capital improvement plan that will affect sidewalks, and you'll hear a lot about sidewalks coming up. And I think one of the biggest things that we have done as a body is we have done good governance. We have, I think you read last week that Harrisburg, Pennsylvania was going broke, they're bankrupt. And Asheville's not that way. We've been struggling for a number of years, but we have kept a good financial statement, and we're doing well in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Chase?
No other organization has done more for furthering intelligent political discussion in this country than the League of Women Voters. I'm proud to be sitting at this side of the table at a League of Women Voters event, because I've been on the other side of the table lots of times. My mother, too, was an active League of Women Voters participant. A little about myself. I grew up in Maryland, and I attended the University of Wisconsin, moved to North Carolina with my family in 1981. I've worked as a public and charter school educator for 26 years as a special education teacher and administrator. That was in Avery County schools and also at Cross Nor Academy, a charter school for children from families in crisis. I am the only educator sitting at this table, and there's currently not an educator on the council. Now, we've got a responsibility to appoint the Asheville City School Board. I'm hoping that my experience as an educator will help me to help select good members of the Asheville City School Board who will provide a comprehensive and meaningful education for the children in the Asheville City Schools. I hope that when you go out and vote on November 8th, I hope you'll be supporting the 0.25% sales tax for AV Tech. As an educator, I certainly am. And I hope that when you make that vote, you'll also consider supporting the educator who is running. My wife Nan and I raised our 3 children in Boone, where I served on the Boontown Council for 8 years. During that time, I worked diligently on improving the water system. I was chair of the Boone Greenway Task Force, which built a beautiful greenway along the New River. And I developed and worked very hard at developing revenue sources besides the property tax, including implementing the occupancy tax in Boone and also a water impact fee that kept water rates for everyone in the city down and provided capital money for further investment. When the children grew up and they were gone from Boone, we decided to move to Asheville. I like Boone, but I love Asheville. Asheville's way more fun, and we have really enjoyed being here. We live right near Two Guys Hoagies. Our house is the one that you can even see it from Charlotte Street. It's covered in a poplar bark. It's a rather distinctive looking house, and we're really enjoying being where we can walk. But I'm running because I'm concerned about the fundamental problem that Asheville has with its streets and sidewalks. We've got roads filled with potholes, sidewalks are too often impassable. We've got stop signs and other signs that are covered with tree branches. We've got curbs and drains blocked with leaves. In winter, we have snow removal that's ineffectual. We have traffic calming devices that do more harm than good. I hope to talk more about that when I have more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. Now, Mr. Cates.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. This is a great turnout, and I'm excited to have so many people. And I have good news to announce. The good news is that our president gets it. He was here yesterday, and he said, jobs now. That's what we need as a country. That's what we need in our state. That's what we need in our city. Jobs now. And I've been saying, this is the most important issue in the race. It's jobs before anything else. It's jobs before anything else. My son was here earlier. We love the sidewalks. They need improving, but we use them. We love the greenways. We need more, it'd be great. We love the bike lanes. But if his dad doesn't have a job, none of that matters. It's jobs before anything. Now, the choice before everybody this year is very clear. We have a progressive city council that has selected 3 progressive candidates. We have 2 Democrats running, and we have 1 Republican. That's me. Our city council needs balance. Every person in Asheville deserves a voice. They deserve a seat at the table. Asheville needs balance. I can bring that balance to city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go into the question and answer period. And I appreciate that you've withheld applause during the statements, and I hope that you will continue to do that during the question and answer period so we can fit in as many questions as possible. It looks like we've got about 15 questions there, so we know we can't get them all. I'm going to start this one with Mr. Cates, and I would ask that you just pass the microphone down so I don't have to introduce you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Since the City Council appoints the members of the Asheville City School Board, what criteria would you use in making your selection?
Well, the first criteria, they have to have experience in the educational system. They have to have experience in managing an educational system. Those are the most important aspects of anyone who's appointed. But at the same time, it's extremely important that they have financial skills. We have budget problems in our city. That's an extremely important aspect of managing the schools.
When I spoke about this earlier, I used 2 words, comprehensive and meaningful. As an educator, I've seen the damage that the testing has done to our school system, and we need school board members who recognize that there is more to education than multiple choice tests. So I would be looking for people who recognize that, who are concerned about science, social studies, the arts, and music, making that a vital portion of our educational system. That's what I would be looking for, and I hope that I could make a contribution in that regard. Thank you.
Appointing the school board is one of the few things that council can directly do with the school system, and we have a very fair and open process of interviewing those candidates, and it's done to a level that it's transparent. They're interviewed in front of the television. They are interviewed by process of answering a lot of questions, essay questions, and shortlisted, and then the interviews take place. And I think it's incumbent upon the city council to have balance on that board as we do on any board, and that involves people that are in the education system, people who have a background in education. It involves people being mothers and fathers and involved with the school system. So I think it's important that people we place on there represents a total community and the makeup of the community. I think that's what we look at as a council when we make those appointments. And then we really need to hold those people accountable for what happens, because it's just too easy to serve another term if we don't have them in that accountable position and make a regular report to council.
This is one of the areas that I'm most interested in, actually, in getting onto the Asheville City Council. My understanding is that City Council has been appointing the school board, but not really paying all that much attention to it afterwards, and the attitude really has been, well, really the only thing that City Council can do on this is appoint the school board. And so, because this is of such great personal interest to me, I would like to actually see us take a more active role in being involved in what's happening at the City Council. You see that there's this a huge amount of accountability that's going on with how the City Council goes about appointing the Planning and Zoning Board. And we hear a lot in the community about who's getting on the Planning and Zoning Board and how that process is going. And we're not really hearing about that when it comes to our school board. I personally can't think of anything more important in guaranteeing our future than to make sure that we are raising our children and educating our children properly. So in terms of the criteria, I would also say, yes, we should look for a balance on our school board in terms of people who have a vested interest in making sure that what's happening in the schools is the right thing for our children. They need to be open-minded and looking at new developments in education. And at the same time, I just want to say, when Saul was talking about being an educator, that I also do have a background in education. I was the early childhood educator for the Asheville JCC for 3.5 years, and then ran the children's programs there for a number of years. And I attended AD Tech actually when I went back to school to become an early childhood educator when I was going back for retraining in my career. So I just wanted to make that clear.
I think the achievement gap in our public school system here in Asheville is one of the greatest challenges the community faces. Improving the quality of education is really critical. I take that very seriously. Regarding the qualities that are important in school board members, leadership experience at a board level so that proper oversight can happen. Some familiarity with public education, but importantly a willingness to learn and to drill down and become expert as you go. And commitment. Folks that are willing to commit and do the legwork to see the job through. My reflection, as a 5.5-year member of one of the city boards and commissions and chairman for a good part of that time, my view is that the city council can do better at encouraging strong applicants for all boards and commissions, especially the city school board and the planning and zoning commission and others where authority is delegated. The process recently for selection of candidates to the Planning and Zoning Commission was greatly improved over any selection process I had seen before. Great screening, great interview techniques, great paring down techniques. I think we were fortunate we had a number of great candidates there. I'm not sure that City Council and city staff did a lot to solicit those candidates. I think we can do more to solicit great candidates to the school board.
The school board is 5 members. In January, 2 of those members' terms will be ending, and the council will have an opportunity to appoint 2 new folks to that. The budget for the schools this year is close to $60 million. We have over 4,000 students that are served by it, so it's really vital that we get strong candidates in there. I've observed the interview process for school board members in the past, and fortunately here in Asheville we do have some terrific candidates, and council has done a pretty good job selecting people. But I think the message to anybody that seeks to serve on the board is that we need accountability on issues such as the minority achievement gap, that we need accountability from the superintendent on down, and we'll be looking for that for whoever is selected for the school board.
All right, the next question, I'm going to start with Mr. Hunt, come down the line, and then send it back up to Mr. Keller. I'm combining two questions regarding taxes because, as I say, I have too many questions to pose. One says the city council hasn't raised property taxes in at least 8 years. The general fund is around 90 million annually and has actually decreased recently in size. City employees haven't been given raises in 2 years, and due to cost constraints, the city hasn't replaced the leaf collection trucks. Given the financial situation, will you vote to raise taxes to pay for sidewalks, leaf trucks, and other capital expenditures? And the other question was, again, about raising taxes outside of AB tax increase. If there were a referendum to increase the sales tax to pay for sidewalks, greenways, or bike paths, would you vote in favor of it?
Regarding property taxes, raising property taxes is not what I'm interested in doing. It is the case that the property owners of Asheville bear a relatively greater burden of absorbing the costs associated with serving folks that come in from outside of the community than it is compared to any other city in the state. We've got a higher ratio of daytime and vacation visitors into our town relative to our own population than any other place in the state. So adding the burden to property tax owners does not make sense at all. Rather, I think we should address that inequity of where revenues come from by trying to work with county and state legislative delegations to investigate ways to get a greater mix of revenues that are sourced from folks that come in. And sales tax might be one of those routes. Prepared food tax, lodging tax are some areas that are discussed. It's all very complex. These are not new ideas. They're politically contentious. But there is a fundamental inequity there that needs to be addressed. Regarding a referendum for sales tax, the city of Asheville does not have the authority. The city council does not have the authority to put a sales tax referendum on the ballot. That would only be granted through a special act of the General Assembly. That would not be the first choice for me. Sales tax to fund, to support the general operating budget would not be the first place I would look.
I'm not in favor of raising property taxes. I think that puts an undue burden on homeowners. And I think that at this point when the economy, and when people are already hurting, I mean, that is an area where I do not see us wanting to do that. Regarding sales tax, Mark just explained that that's not something the city can necessarily do, but I agree also with looking at ways that we can increase revenues through hotel room stay taxes and other ways. And as far as funding infrastructure projects like sidewalks and greenways, I would really like to see us work with the Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization to get them to move some of their funding into these kind of projects, these kind of transportation-related projects.
One council member does not have the ability to say, we're not going to raise taxes or we're going to keep them the same. My inclination is that no one at this table or out there really wants to raise property taxes. But we begin our budget deliberations at the early part of the year, and we're going to set forward, and this with an entirely new council is yet to be seen what it will do, but we will come up with strategic goals, and then we'll work with staff toward funding those goals. And I think we hear a loud cry for sidewalks, greenways, those kind of things that are very, very good and very nice. But I want you to recognize that we have employees that have not had any pay increase or any cost of living increase in the last 3 years. We are at the edge of losing good, well-trained employees for other jobs that pay better in the private sector and other departments. So we have to keep that in mind. That's a very important part of the cost of government, that we have to give those people some thought at this time. It's going to be a tough budget year. I think you need experience there. And I think that as far as a sales tax or as Mark said, we just don't have the ability to say that we can do that. Now, there will come someday a time when we'll see a sunsetting of some taxes or a different economy that might allow us to improve on sales tax without actually adding a burden to our citizens. The realities of TDA's tourism hotel tax, it works to about $1.3 million per year, and it's not a terribly significant amount of money as far as balancing budgets. So these things are not novel ideas that someone's not thought of before. We do need help. I think the real help comes from working with the county. We've had a committee established for a year and a half now, working with the county and our legislators, trying to find common ground, consolidation efforts so we can make government less expensive for the city taxpayer as we are overused as a city.
I also would not be interested in initially looking at raising property taxes and hope that we could come up using creative financing and some innovative ideas to, excuse me, to avoid raising property taxes at all, but we do need more revenue. I do think that there is potential with the occupancy tax in that that is a tax, of course, that is on hotel and motel guests, but it doesn't come to the city of Asheville, it goes to the Buncombe County Tourist Development Authority. I hope that over the years, this year, the Buncombe County TDA has recognized that what happens in Asheville is critical to hotel and motel occupancy, and through Mr. Davis's good work and the work of many other people, we're getting to a lot of money for the improvement of the Asheville Civic Center. But that's the first time that's ever happened. I'd like to see that happen every year. We're actually running at a deficit in the Asheville Civic Center. Not surprising for facilities of that sort. But we could be doing better. I think there are ways that we can improve our revenue for the Asheville Civic Center. Carl Ketterjohn had a column in the Asheville Citizen Times recently about how we could make, with a little sprucing up of the Asheville Civic Center and some creative ways of providing parking and on weekday evenings when a lot of the commercial establishments and churches' parking lots are empty, we could run a little convention center here. So something like that could be of help. I do support a bond for sidewalks. Not anything else but for sidewalks, and the reason is this. Sidewalks properly installed will last 70 to 90 years. We pay those off in 30 years, and we are getting ahead. Not all of us will live to see that, but we will, but Asheville needs more sidewalks so desperately. That's the one place where I would be willing to look at a bond.
I will vote no against any property tax increase. It's not that I'm not interested in it. It's not that I wouldn't prefer that path. I will vote no against the property tax increase. I also don't support a sales tax to pay for sidewalks. What we need to do is grow our economy. The way to give these city employees a raise is to create more revenue so that we have more money. We grow our economy, we'll have the money for these things.
Helen?
Thank you. Couple points. Nobody wants to raise property taxes, of course. I'll tell you what we did, though, on the sidewalks in East Asheville that we're going to try and replicate citywide. When we began that campaign, it was on Highway 70, Tunnel Road, which is a state-maintained road. We went to the Department of Transportation and said, you got to partner with us. This is your road. You're supposed to maintain this. They said, sorry, we don't do sidewalks. That's a city function. We went to their policies and procedures manual and pointed out to them that safety of pedestrians is within their purview. They're at the table now. The Department of Transportation is putting in 2 miles of sidewalk on Tunnel Road. Guess what? We have other state-maintained roads that need sidewalks. Hendersonville Road, Patton Avenue, Lester Highway. I led the effort that collaborated with the Department of Transportation to bring them to the table to make that happen. And I intend to do the same thing on council. So we can stretch our dollars a lot further. Those sidewalks on Tunnel Road are cost about $43 a foot. It's a lot, but if we bring the Department of Transportation to the table, we can go significantly further. And I've also talked about a bond referendum too. But one thing that I want, the way to do this is just as I've tried to do in my community, is to get the community input on this. get people with ownership. So the way I would try to structure a bond is to go out in the community and let you and all the folks around town maybe have public hearings in each of the 5 zip codes, let you set the priorities, so we come up with a detailed, specific bond so you know what you're voting on. And then take it to the voters then. I think a good indicator of whether a bond's going to work in the city of Asheville is to see what happens with the AD Tech vote. But I'm optimistic that people will support that, a majority will support that, and if so, then we can look at perhaps down the road doing a bond for sidewalks.
Thank you. Would you pass the mic down to Mr. Chase? I'll have you go first, and then Mr. Cates, and then back up to Mr. Howard. The question is, do you support the establishment of a business improvement district for downtown? If so, what will you do to implement it?
That decision clearly needs to be made by the people who are paying the tax, the people in the business improvement district. However, if they are supportive of it, I would certainly support it. When I was on the Boomtown Council, we implemented, our initials were different, we called it the Municipal Service District, but it was the same basic idea. Downtown businesses impose a tax on themselves and then decide how that money should be spent so that it will benefit the downtown and will benefit their businesses. That's an excellent idea because downtown clearly does have some very special needs that will help all of us if they can meet those needs. So yes, I would be supportive of the Business Improvement District.
Business improvement district.
There's a lot of empty space downtown right now. There's a lot of companies that have gone out of business. You can walk around downtown and you can just see that for yourself. I would only support it if the businesses down there really want that. If they don't want it, then I can't support it. They're hurting right now, and we need to listen to them.
All the way down to Mr. Howard.
I've talked to business owners downtown about this idea here, and I said, so what would you use this for? And they talked about things like greater litter cleanup, a greater police presence, that it's important enough to them that they're willing to pay extra to do that. It's not for me to tell them yes or no, but what I want to see is a demonstrated demand on the part of a supermajority of downtown property owners and businesses before I would support that.
I agree that a supermajority would be required, but I would look at it closely, assuming there was that level of support. But I'd also like to say that I think that downtown Asheville is one of the key assets that our community has. It's one of the things that reinforces our authenticity, gives us all a sense of place. It's what attracts many people here as visitors, and it's a key part of what will attract businesses, industry, and jobs to this area. So the city of Asheville investing in the infrastructure of downtown and ensuring that it remains vibrant and special is really critical to our future, both from a livability standpoint for us and what it means for visitors and economic growth.
Having been a business owner in the downtown area, I know how really challenging that is. And any financial strain that gets placed on your business can be the thing that makes or breaks you, it often feels like. So with that in mind, I would underscore what everybody here seems to agree with is that this initiative would really need to be widely supported by downtown businesses, and I think that the way to implement that would be to, again, work with the Downtown Association and work with downtown businesses to determine what the priorities are, so that we are supporting what downtown businesses actually need rather than imposing on them what we think they need.
As I said earlier, I'm an owner of a downtown business. Our business is located in the Western Gateway Corridor. And I've been very involved in downtown issues. I have served on the Downtown Commission the entirety of my time on council, and also a member of the Downtown Association, and have just really worked to forward the downtown master plan to begin with. I was a champion of that plan. And the bid district was a recommendation of the downtown master plan, so it's not surprising that there has been a lot of talk, a lot of coalition of downtown merchants around that. And I think the thing they have to remember is that we as a council have dedicated a lot of assets, a lot of facilities, police facilities, park facilities downtown, and we've put an inordinate amount of effort into keeping the downtown to a higher level than we do some other parts of town. You have to remember that 74% of the sales tax generated in the city of Asheville and Buncombe County comes from the downtown. So that's an economic driver that we have to take very good care of. I think that I'm very supportive of a bid district if that's what the downtown property owners and merchants want. If not, and that has to be a supermajority, or at least the bulk of the people to change that. And I think that they have to recognize that we would have to get back to a baseline of service as a city if that in fact happens, because we are putting a higher number of police assets down there and a lot more cleanliness goes on in downtown than it does other places. Though I will be the first to say we need to be pressure washing those sidewalks and doing things that make visitors to this area see the shine that we have on that city. So it's very important to me that we do the right thing, and I think downtown merchants and property owners, which a lot of them are absentee, they have to be involved in this process before I would be supportive of it.
All right, we'll start with you on this next question, Mr. Davis. Asheville has a citizen police advisory board which has no power or authority to investigate allegations of abuse or corruption. Would you support the creation of a true civilian review board with the authority to investigate allegations of abuse or corruption?
I was chair of the Public Safety Committee of Council and actually was liaison to the Police Advisory Board. And I think we have great opportunities in reorganizing that board. That board has been fairly non-functioning, and it's based on people being from certain quadrants of the town. And it's really not had the teeth it's needed to have, and it's not had the representation. I think we need to reorganize and restructure it and solicit people to serve on that board and give them a greater connection with our new police chief coming in, a greater responsibility there, a greater ability to be heard, council really respecting them as an advisory board that is functioning as many advisory boards do. Advisory boards are very important, but the police advisory, Citizen Police Advisory Board has never really had the teeth and the effect that it needs to have. As far as a review board, I'm not supportive of that because we get into personnel issues and we get into micromanagement of what a police department should be doing. And I think it's incumbent upon us as citizens to make the right selection of the chief, then through staff and through council hold the chief accountable for what's going on there. And I think that when we hear insensitivity or any matter that where there's smoke, there's fire. And we need to be investigating. And I think that Citizens Police Advisory Board can be a real tool in that, but I am not supportive of a review board.
All right, would you pass the mic to Mr. Chase, please?
With the new police chief coming in, we have an opportunity to make improvements in our police force. The Citizen Police Advisory Board can do more, but what I would hope that the new police chief will do, and that we'll be looking for a new police chief who will really emphasize community policing, and by doing that, that we would have fewer problems that might require investigation. I agree with Mr. Davis. At this point, I would certainly not support giving them investigative authority. I would like to see them have some more visibility, have some more contact with the police chief and other members of the police force, and hope that that will be effective before we go toward the more drastic measure of looking at having them actually having investigative authority.
I don't support the investigative authority, but I do think that we need to have a stronger advisory board and integrate the community closer to the police department. For example, in Chicago, they have what's called the CAPS program, and that's the alternative policing strategy, where the police really get involved in the community, literally they knock on doors. This advisory committee needs to be closer integrated in that manner so that they have the police has a really a better understanding of what's going on in the community.
Yes, just
I do know that some in the lesbian and gay community and minority communities here do feel many times that they are in a vulnerable position as it relates to the Asheville Police Department. And I believe that at least, perhaps if we need a formal review board, but at least a liaison that folks in those communities can feel confident in talking to ensure that their interests are adequately represented to the full police department. And at the same time, we also need to be doing ongoing training for the APD in issues related to gay and lesbian communities and minority communities to ensure there's a sensitivity to the issues that are unique to those communities.
I think that citizens have the right and should have the expectation that their city council and the senior staff of the city have a duty to hold all staff accountable, and all operations of the city need to be reviewed by those. And I do not agree that city council should delegate that authority to hold staff accountable to anyone else. Now, there is a proper chain of command, if you will, from council to city manager to police chief and so on. I do think the function of the advisory board is critical to that. And as Jan pointed out, we perhaps had some dysfunctionality there, so it would be more rigorous oversight through existing authority channels and a stronger advisory board role. But at the same time, I am sensitive and aware of the concerns of folks in the community, especially certain populations that feel underserved and threatened at times.
I have to be honest that I don't really know all the ins and outs of how our police department works and how that department is or isn't held accountable at this point. But as a citizen, I feel it's vitally important that all citizens can participate in holding our police department accountable. And I think that the real concern here is that there's often cronyism and there is the potential for corruption that we have actually seen happen. And so if you're not allowing citizens to be involved in holding the police department accountable, then there is a danger that, you know, some kind of cronyism and cover-ups and friendships might possibly lead to ongoing corruption. So I feel that it's very important for our advisory committee, our police advisory committee, to have more say, more teeth, and as far as who gets to investigate allegations that come up against the police department, I believe that it should be, maybe it's not the same group of people that are on the advisory committee, but there should be some independent body that is able to investigate allegations that's not going to necessarily be tied in, because I think that kind of problem can be very insidious, and we need to be very careful about how we handle these kind of investigations and make sure that it's fair.
I have two questions here directed to Ms. Gray, Mr. Hunt, and Mr. Pellet. I noticed there are signs around town promoting the three of you on the same side. Do you three have a common philosophy, common agenda, or common alliance? And the second question is, you have chosen to run as a bloc backed by the Park PAC. Please tell us who are the major backers of this PAC, especially those organizations and individuals from outside Asheville. And would you start with this, Ms. Gray?
Okay, I'll try to keep both those questions straight. So the first question was,
do you have a common agenda, philosophy, alliance? And the second question is about the Park PAC and who are their major backers.
okay, I'm going to start with that one. I actually don't really know who the major backers are of people advocating real conservancy, but I do know that they have selected me as one of their candidates that they would like to endorse, and I believe that that's because I have already been working in the community to advocate for protecting neighborhoods and protecting our environment, and I believe that those are the things that Park is probably most concerned with. And so, honestly, I know a couple of people that are involved in Park, but I don't really know who the major backers are, and if there's anybody from out of town, I'm not aware of it. Regarding the 3 candidates that have been endorsed by both the Sierra Club and people advocating Rome Conservancy, I can say that from what I've seen and what I've heard in these candidate forums, just like the rest of the public, I think that to a great extent, we do have some agreement on many of the things that we're most concerned about. And I think that we have a nice relationship in running for office, but at this point there has not been any official endorsements from any of the candidates, and we have not had an official slate where we have decided to all work together, but I think that we certainly all appreciate the support that we've been getting, and I think that that is helping to advance the things certainly that are important to me.
In addition to Park, I believe the Sierra Club also endorsed the 3 of us and helped fund those signs, just for clarity. It is the case, well, first of all, let me say that I'm appreciative and honored by endorsements from those 2 groups, as well as a good number of other endorsements from city council members and others that I've gotten. Really honored and appreciative. Park did not, there was no collaboration among these 3 candidates with Park to get on that sign. I learned about the signs the day they showed up on a Saturday about 5 weeks ago, or 6 weeks ago. Again, honored, but not part of the planning for that. There has been no collaboration among the 3 of us on policy positions or running as a block. Part of the question was, you 3 have decided to run as a block. That's not true. I've explained to both of these guys that I am not endorsing either of them. I don't perceive that they've endorsed me.
I did not solicit it from Park, but like many organizations, we've talked to them, I've talked to them, and like I said, I'm appreciative. My campaign theme is Neighborhoods United. It's about bringing people together to make change in their community, articulating what they need, and then working together to do it. And frankly, that overlaps quite a bit with the Park's emphasis too. So these overlapping interests, it's only natural that I think they're going to gravitate towards candidates that represent what they stand for as well too.
All right, Mr. Pelley, I'll start with you for this next question, then I'm going to have you send it down to Mr. Cates and go back up to mine. What will you do to bring jobs, particularly good paying jobs, to Asheville?
Sure. Number 1 is supporting the AB Tech referendum to ensure that they're training people for the jobs of the future in our community. That's a long-term investment in our community, and I'm going to be out there with Sheriff Van Duncan, 9 a.m. Thursday, the first time I can vote for it. I'm going to be voting for it. But also, the city of Asheville, the current council's done a terrific job working on making our public infrastructure energy efficient. It's saving the city money in the long term. You've seen the hybrid buses on the street. You've seen the LED street lights out there now. All those investments save energy. I think it's time now to take the next step. The city of Asheville needs to work with moderate income homeowners, senior citizens, people that are in their homes. We have a housing stock here that's 70, some 80, sometimes 90-year-old homes that could really benefit from energy efficiency improvements. So on council, I will help lead and support an effort to make low-interest loans available to homeowners to make energy efficiency improvements. I'm thinking in the range of $500 to $5,000 to have an energy audit done, identify what needs to be done, and then go ahead and make those improvements. This program not only saves homeowners, it upgrades their house, it saves them on energy costs, it creates jobs, because right now, Green Opportunities and ABCCM are training workers to do these work, but there's no jobs for them once they're done with the training. This is a program that's going to meet several demands in the community, and so that's one of my ideas.
We have more than 17,000 people unemployed in our area. In the African American community, It's depression. We talk about a recession, they're talking about a depression. We're the 7th worst place in the nation for hunger. We need to take all of our energy and put it into job creation. I wrote an economic plan for the city. Asheville needs to market itself better to these other businesses. We take the Biltmore estate, and we market that through the TVA, and people come here to visit. We have the mountains. We market that to people all around the country, and they come to visit. We even make money in Asheville off of the concept, keep Asheville weird. People buy that. In my economic plan, we market Asheville as the home of the environmental movement. We market it as the Silicon Valley of the environmental industry. We have a unique vision, and we have a unique people, and we have a unique community in the people of Asheville. We are the most environmentally passionate city in the country. I think we need to take that passion and we need to sell it and market it to the rest of the country and to the rest of the world.
Back in the 30s, Franklin Roosevelt came up with a plan of improving our nation's infrastructure to get people back to work. President Obama's plan also emphasizes improving infrastructure to get people back to work. Because my concern is about the streets and sidewalks in Asheville, it's logical that I also want to improve our infrastructure and thereby getting people back to work. I'd like to find revenues that we can use toward improving our streets and making them safer and paying a living wage. Anything going through the city of Asheville has to be a living wage. People will make reasonable money for doing this, and these are jobs that won't require college education. That's where we need to emphasize our efforts if we're going to create jobs. If we do pass the sidewalk construction bond, which would only be based on a comprehensive sidewalk improvement plan that would need to be done to determine where we can find, where we need to build those sidewalks to make it safest for our pedestrians. If we do that, that is going to create a lot of jobs. And another one is snow removal. The trick on snow removal, as I learned when I lived in Boone, is that you've got to get the snow off the streets quickly before the cars make everything one solid block of ice that we then can't move at all. What that's going to require is a lot of people quickly. So that would be a way that even in the wintertime, we could provide more jobs for people, and I would be looking for ways that we can keep that money locally. And I think if for that kind of construction project, the various construction projects that I've spoken about, we would be keeping that money that we're spending in our city and at the same time making our city a safer, more beautiful place.
I think, number one, we do have to have an educated workforce, and I think the referendum for AB Tech is a good start on that. We're doing more and more at AB Tech to educate that workforce. In fact, a couple of years ago, we did not even offer machine shop or CAD drawing anymore because we said there's no industry coming here. But now with Linamar coming and other people like that, they are offering those programs again, and we are training people to go out and get good jobs. And I think we have to get them ready at the high school level and vocational level at high school to get them to be ready to go to AB Tech. I think it's very important that the city, one of the few tools we have is our economic development policy, which is to use performance-based incentives when they apply. There's a policy in place, and if a local company or a company from outside the area wants to expand or grow their business, they can come to council and they go through a uniform process to get that incentive. That may be the impetus that puts a new business or expands an old business in the community. Very important. There are companies that locate outside the city because they feel like it's easier to do business than it is to do it in the city. I think it's very important also to keep fees and charges in mind, because if you make it too expensive, we end up losing those businesses to other areas. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities that we need to be seeking to improve existing businesses that we have here.
So I like to think of my campaign slogan as the 3 E's, which is environment, education, equality. And those 3 E's in my mind add up to another big E, which is economics. I think that if if we want to continue to be the economic driver of this region, and ultimately I foresee that we might be quite an important economic driver for the entire state of North Carolina, we need to keep doing the work that we are doing, which is to continue to promote environmental initiatives in terms of business, in terms of manufacturing. We need to promote education here, not only education to retrain the workforce, but also we need to have good schools so that people want to live here. When I moved here because I heard that the schools were really good. And so I came here and opened a business because I wanted to be here raising my family. And in terms of equality, I think that we need to do a lot of work, not only on the issue of LGBT equality, but also in terms of minority populations in our community need to feel that they are welcome and part of what's going on in our city. And so we need to do more work on that front to make this a more open city for all types of people, where everybody can come here and feel like they're engaged. Regarding AB Tech, so here's an example of this is an AB Tech story. So I came here after having a very successful career in marketing. And when I got here, I opened a store, and shortly afterwards we found that the store was not going to support our entire household. My husband and I were both working there, and so I went back to school at AB Tech to get a level 3 early childhood administration credential so that I could then go into a different career, and I have been very successful in that career. So we need to continue to support AB Tech as part of the puzzle, and the manufacturing jobs that we can promote here are jobs that don't necessarily require a 4-year degree, but could require a 2-year degree.
There's a striking differential in our community, and that is the great appeal, the aesthetic appeal, our authenticity, and the way people from across the country, including President Obama yesterday, said that this is just a really fantastic place. And we've earned that, and that's on the one hand. On the other hand, we have among the very lowest average wages per job of anywhere in the state, of all the cities. Chapel Hill average wage is twice as much as Asheville's. Now, why? You know, there are a lot, you can look backwards and think about a lot of reasons that might have evolved away, but going forward, we need to leverage our specialness into industrial growth, into business growth, by attracting great employers that are going to offer great jobs. The Economic Development Coalition is a mechanism in place, county, city, state involvement, Chamber of Commerce partnership. It's a great structure. There's a great plan that's evolved, the 5x5 plan that emphasizes it. It actually moves away from tourism, because we know tourism does not generate, and hospitality do not generate great paying jobs. It steps away from tourism as a focus and emphasizes entrepreneurial type businesses, pharmaceutical, medical, high-tech manufacturing, some other sectors that are special opportunities that relate to our infrastructure here in our environment, the kinds of businesses that come here. And it's a very focused strategy to reach out and market to and pull in those specific kinds of businesses. It's very well thought out, very well, very progressive. I think it's a great plan. I don't think we need to try to reinvent how that is going. We're in the early phases. The city of Asheville needs to step up and provide civic leadership, play a strong role in advocating for that plan, get more folks on board, move that plan forward, and I'm optimistic about where that can lead. We're in the early phases, though. Thank you.
All right, this next question is, again, for all of the candidates, and I'll start with Mr. Pelley and come down the line this way. I'm combining a couple of questions about early voting and one about instant runoff voting. The people posing the question about early voting wants to know whether you would support more neighborhood early voting sites. And the question about instant runoff voting is whether you would support implementing instant runoff voting for Asheville City Council elections.
Thank you. Well, if you look at the national level and the political leadership that's taken over in Congress, there's efforts across this country to suppress voting with voter ID, with demanding voter ID, and a host of other efforts to chip away at the ability of people to vote easily. Early voting goes in the other direction. Early voting opens the process up. It allows more people to participate, and more locations help more people participate. We make it easier, we can make democracy work better. So I support expansion of our early voting locations and times in the community here. It begins this Thursday, the 20th, with one location downtown, and a week later, I believe 4 or 5 locations open up across the city. Instant runoff, I definitely would be of interest in that. I think the process of a campaign, however, I'd still like to see a primary and a general election, because I think the process of a campaign is a learning time for voters and for the candidates, and I think we can't end it quickly, relatively speaking. I mean, we need to learn the issues and get out there and hear from you and talk with you. So I think perhaps at the second round of voting, maybe instant runoff there.
The primary elections this year in the municipal race that occurred a week ago from today included one early voting site. That was a decision that was made by council several months earlier. I would have favored maintaining all the early voting sites as we did in the prior election and as will be occurring starting Thursday, by the way, going toward the general election. In terms of additional early voting sites beyond the ones we've designated, I haven't been involved in a look at that. I would gladly look at that. I just don't yet have the sense that even more early voting sites would be important. I do support ways that, finding ways to make it easy for folks to vote and for folks to have access to voting. Regarding instant runoff, I like the primary and general process. My own experience in this campaign has been that the primary serves a very important role of the community being able to get a reflection back of how the candidates have fared. It inspires more research, more looking at candidates. So I would look at instant runoff, but I think there are benefits to the way we have it now.
I think that early voting is extremely important to enable people to get to the polls, who may have trouble getting to the polls, who may need extra time, who have various work schedules. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons for early voting, and so I entirely support continuing that. And in terms of expanding the number of locations, I think within reason, you know, depending on how things are going, I think that you can see that we get an extremely low voter turnout in our town, and I'm not sure that having more early voting locations would inspire more people to vote. So I think maybe what we need to do is figure out how to inspire more people to vote, and then we can look at whether we need more early voting locations to accommodate those throngs of people that are going to be coming out to vote.
Well said. As the only one here with a record of having voted on it, quite frankly, in fact, the park folks, who I'll be happy to introduce, there's several here in the room, but because they took an ad out in the newspaper, kind of a nasty little ad that indicted me for not supporting early voting, and not that I'm bitter about it, but the reality is that I did not support it in the primary election. I'm very happy we're doing it in the general election, but frankly, with the economic situation the way it is, our budget the way it is presently, I just did not see spending those dollars to get that few voters, and I was born out to be true on that. However, I'm kind of glad we had the primary, because I know where I stand on that right now. But it, frankly, I think early voting is good if you can afford it, and if, like Lale said, if we can get people interested and it makes a real difference, I think it's very good. The instant runoff, I think that probably, I feel a little different today about it than I did earlier. I think that it has merit, but I think only in the second round. I'm not sure that that's something that you start with, and I think that I'm very cautious about that one. I'm kind of excited about the way we do things as far as voting, and again, not that I'm bitter about it, but there was a reason I voted against that, as was most of my votes. I would try to think of those as the overall good of the community.
Well, I certainly support early voting. We need to do everything we can to encourage people to vote, and there are plenty of people that just can't vote on a Tuesday. We need to make sure we have that available. We are in a good position right now with the move from Buncombe County's election services to 35 Woodfin. My understanding is that the early voting was at a very high level, and even though we only had one place for it, it's a good central location. Lots of people go there for other reasons. Parking is good. I like that there's going to be more places for early voting in the final election. It does seem to me we have a pretty good balance right now, and I would not recommend any major changes in that at this time. As far as the instant runoff voting, there was one big mess, and when they tried this for the judicial election recently, I remember hearing some of our Buncombe County Election Services employees spending hours and hours going over those ballots. So there's some complications to that need to be considered. I'm certainly glad that we had a primary and then a general election in this particular race. So my guess is that instant runoff voting is not something that I would support in the near future.
Well, I certainly think democracy is important, so I totally agree with that, and that's why I think it's extremely important that we have balance on the Asheville City Council. As far as early voting, that's great. Unfortunately, we just don't have the money. I like early voting, but we don't have the money. We don't have the money to fix the sidewalks that are in disrepair. We don't have the money to fix our water infrastructure. We don't have the money to fully fund the transportation that we would like in this city. That's just the reality. I'd also like to, on the instant runoff, no, I'm not in favor of that. But I would like to go back and speak to the Land of Sky. They've been here since the 60s, and we still have more than 17,000 unemployed people. Advantage West since the 90s, more than 17,000 unemployed people. The Economic Development Coalition, they've been around too. We need to do more to make sure that people are employed. I wrote the economic plan that I did for my son, and I'm more than happy to give it to the city and to the chamber. They can have it. What I want is that when my son grows up, that he can get a quality job here in Asheville. I support the AB Tech. What I don't support is teaching and training those kids so that they can leave and get a job somewhere else. I want to work to bring quality jobs to Asheville. That's the most important issue to me.
All right, that's a segue into one of these questions that was directed specifically to you, and then I have a question directed specifically to Mr. Davis and one for Ms. Gregg. Mr. Cates, in your economic plan, you suggest giving tax and regulatory relief to companies that move here. Does that mean those companies will not have to comply with zoning or clean air laws?
Absolutely not.
Is that yours? All right, Mr. Davis. You continue to state that you had to vote against the Caledonia property rezoning because permits had already been issued. But in fact, no permits had been issued by the city. Will you reconsider your vote in light of this information?
Actually, that's a statement that I made, and frankly, I'm not sure where the permits were in the process they had been applied for, whether they'd been issued or not, I don't know. The reason I voted as I did in the Caledonia project, when it came forward initially, it was large and out of the scheme of that neighborhood. It was too tall, it was too dense, or too high, and I didn't see that it was a good project, so I voted against it. Then came back a new iteration of floor lower, 2 buildings 500 feet apart. They fit the zoning requirements. I had had the opportunity to look at the zoning of that property on 3 different occasions. That was the 3rd one. And we had never changed the zoning from the zoning that had started out. The man who was doing the development had done a nice job with the Kenilworth Inn, had saved what would have been a derelict in that neighborhood. We had never changed that zoning. The second time it came for a parking lot, we did not change it again. The 3rd time, council decided that they would change the zoning while he was in the permitting process. I'm not sure exactly where it was, and Ms. Ho, we'll always disagree on that one, but it was in the process. process. And I felt like we changed the rules in the middle of the game. I felt that's unconstitutional. I felt I could not support it. That was the reason I voted against the zoning change that we made on council.
Ms. Gray, I've got two people here that have somewhat related questions. As most people who work in Asheville don't live near Asheville, and most tourists don't ride buses, how do you think eliminating cars will affect our economy? And the other one is a more general one. There are some questions raised about your position on car-free transit. Can you clarify what you mean by that?
Thank you for asking those questions. I'm so happy to clarify. I am not asking for the elimination of the automobile. So you are all here to know that that is not my position. I am very intent on improving our transportation options so that we don't all have to drive automobiles. And this will make it better for all the people who do have to drive automobiles because we will reduce congestion. And it will also help the future because I think most people would tend to agree that we really do need to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, particularly oil and gasoline. This is something that we've known about since the 1970s, and I think it's probably going to become more and more critical, and we have yet to address this issue, and it's probably time. I first got involved in being very concerned about transportation issues in our community when I started advocating on behalf of the Montford neighborhood around the I-26 connector. And there's been a lot of misrepresentation in my views on that as well, but I want to be clear that what I was advocating for there was a reduction in the size of that project because as it's currently being presented by the Department of Transportation, regardless of which of the alternatives you look at, it's massive. And the reason why it's massive is because the Department of Transportation is projecting that 20 years from now there are going to be very many more cars on the road that are trying to use that highway. So we can look at that and go, oh my goodness, we have to accommodate all these cars. Or we can look at that as an opportunity to figure out how we get some cars off of the road in the meantime. And so there are numerous ways that we can do that. There's all kinds of transportation infrastructure and all kinds of transportation options that we can put into place. And so that is what I am advocating for.
I'll start with Mr. Davis on this. I'm combining a couple of questions about the city and county working together. Is there any way city and county can get together to extend the bus system further, do more about sidewalks, parks, and related issues? And the other more general questions, what are your priorities in working with the county?
I'll start in reverse. My priorities are very high with working with the county. We have had just a great ongoing effort to collaborate on several issues, and parks are one of those. And we worked long and hard. We actually got down to the final hours of that and have hit a snag. And quite frankly, I think that the county is a great partner. We have the opportunity with our transit system of incorporating the Trailblazer system from the county to connect with Haywood County, with Apple Valley and Henderson County. I actually chair the French Broad River MPO, and we work very hard at connectivity, and we're working very hard at intermodal transportation. And there are dollars that are being set aside for those efforts. Now, granted, they are small compared to the overall transportation budget because the highways do consume a lot of it, but the bulk of 85%. But the opportunities are great to work together with the county. I think that witness what we've done with the Sports Commission. We created that. I was very instrumental in that. The county was very much at the table. We used that to leverage the Southern Conference return to the city, and we have them for a 3-year out. We were able to use those dollars that we generated together. The county was a big player in that. TDA was a big player. The city's a big player, and we are able to refurbish the Civic Center, which will help this whole community. We'll have better access. It will be a modern, new building. It's got good bones, and we're putting good framework around those, and it's something we're all going to be proud of and will benefit as an economic driver. So those are opportunities that we're already working with the county on, and I think some of the commissioners are some of our very best friends, and I think we have the best relationship with the commissioners that we've ever had, or possibly in recent or in memorable history.
Pass it down that way.
To me or to Chris?
Pardon me?
To Chris or to me?
No, to you.
Okay.
Thank you. But go ahead.
In terms of the relationship between Buncombe County and the city of Asheville, I really think that, again, this is another area where there's just tremendous opportunity, because as far as I can tell, Buncombe County and Asheville are so interdependent on each other for so many reasons, for jobs, for the, our tax structure, our resources, services. I mean, we go back and forth, and I don't really understand why there's this division between the city and the county. To me, that really doesn't make any sense. And I think that if the city council and the county commission can really come together with that in mind, that this is a relationship where rather than competing against each other for dollars and resources, we really would be much stronger working together, and that would benefit both the county and the city, and really it's the same community. So I would like very much to work with the county in order to promote that, just that one small idea that I think could lead to so many beneficial programs and efforts where we'll be better together. And then in terms of how that works for transportation and all these other things that we want to work on, I think that it's you start there and then we address everything together. And that can expand out into the region, and as Jan talked about, the Metropolitan Planning Organization is a perfect example where we have an opportunity to work with regional leaders to promote projects that are going to benefit the entire region when it comes to transportation. It's not just Asheville that's going to benefit, and if we go into that, the MPO with the idea that we're promoting our projects for our city, then there's going to be resistance. But if we're looking at this as how do these projects benefit the entire region, I think we'll have a much stronger voice in advocating for what we need.
Regarding the history of the relationship, the annexation issue and the water issue have long festered and been points of contention. It may be that the annexation issue, at least for the foreseeable future, is becoming pretty much a non-issue. So that lowers the temperature. The water issue is still contentious, but perhaps it might find some settled space. When just soon after I decided to run, one of the first things I did was track down David Gant, and County Commission Chairman David Gant, sat down with him. He expressed that he thinks relationships between city leaders, council especially, county commissioners, are better than they've been in his experience. I've heard the same thing from other county commissioners. I've heard the same thing from city council members. So I'm optimistic that we are making progress. I said earlier, I'm committed to collaboration with other levels of government. It was one of the inspirations for me to try to pursue this seat on city council so I could be more helpful and committed to that. Regarding collaborating on transit, sidewalks, et cetera, transit requires density and it requires frequency of ridership to justify. Transit is really heavily subsidized. So the notion that we would extend transit way out into remote areas is probably not realistic. There are some urbanized areas that perhaps we could collaborate on. Transportation infrastructure like sidewalks, bike lanes, perhaps there are opportunities there. The county has a Greenway master planning process underway, and there's some discussion about perhaps co-funding between county and municipalities, not just the city of Asheville on that. There might have been another point to the question. I'm sorry, I might have lost that. Thank you.
Well, we're looking at working with the county in a relationship with Buncombe County. I've done that in East Asheville. We were looking to preserve a 9-acre site adjoining the Blue Ridge Parkway, and the community came together and we approached David Gant and the county commissioners, and we said, if the community raises a third, will Buncombe County kick in a third, and we can get the city of Asheville to kick in a third. And each thought that was an advantageous relationship that we initiated at the community level. And today we have Masters Park, a 9-acre park that has trails from Hawk Creek Valley up to the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's a matter a willingness to reach out and look for shared common interest. We said to David Gant and the commissioners, we're all residents of Buncombe County too, and they obviously recognize that, and they worked with us, and Mayor Bellamy recognized that this was a smart partnership too, and so that's the kind of approach I will take as well.
I'm looking forward to working with the county. That's integral, we have to do that. I don't think we need a small idea, I don't even think we need a big idea. I think we need a grand vision. And that's what I tried to convey in my economic plan. Now, what I don't want to do is have sidewalks, buses, bike lanes paid for by passing the debt on to my son. I think that's wrong. I don't want him to have to pay for our wants. That's why I also included a self-funding mechanism in the economic plan that I would be glad to talk about with anyone. The important thing is that we grow our economy and then we use that money to fund some of these things that we all agree are important and that we want.
Regarding the integrated transportation, I do think there may be some benefits there, just based on something that I saw when I was riding the bus in North Asheville. We came to a stop, and a small vehicle pulled up, not that small apparently, because lots of people got out of it. They had come down from the northern part of the county, and they got in the bus. So that's already going on. That's great that it's going on. I think it should continue to be encouraged. I had a conversation with Dr. Joe Dunn, who's formerly on the City Council, and he expressed some concern to me in this regard because he felt that there were opportunities for us to reduce costs in the county and costs in the city by looking at where some of our services overlap. He specifically mentioned emergency services. So that would be something that I would certainly look into. And I've already mentioned my concern for the Buncombe County Tourist Development Authority, recognizing that people are coming to this area as tourists because of Asheville. And the more that we can convince the county commissioners, the present county commissioners and future county commissioners, of the importance of Asheville to the entire county, the better off the county and Asheville will be.
I have 15 more questions up here. I'm only going to pose one more. But the league this year is going to offer a new service where they're going to write up all the questions that have not been asked and send them to the candidates so that they will know what issues are of importance to you. Because of those 15 questions, some, maybe 5 of them are general things like what groups have you worked for, what successes have you had in the community, but some of them are specific, like the Asheville Civic Center and how they would vote on the proposed constitutional amendment, etc. So the candidates will see what your concerns are. My last question that I'm going to pose is, do you have concerns about any existing city policies? If so, what are they? How would you initiate changes? And I'll start with Mr. Cates and go right down the line.
My concern is that when businesses come before council, that they don't feel like they're going to city council with their hat in hand. We need businesses in Asheville to grow. We need them to hire people. Asheville is on a trajectory like Portland, Oregon. And right now, businesses are leaving the city and they're going into the county. And I love the county and I want to work with them, but I don't want our businesses to leave the city. So for me, it's not so much a policy, is that we need to really listen to our business leaders that employ and hire people. And it needs to be a real partnership. They don't need to feel like they're coming before council with hat in hand, because they're the most integral part of making sure and ensuring that people are employed, that people can put food on the table. That's important. We need to make sure that businesses want to work with the city council and they don't dread going down to City Hall.
My concern is not a policy, but a lack of policy. On March 30th, 2011, the Director of Public Works, Kathy Ball, was quoted in the Asheville Citizen-Times as saying, "Repaving might not happen for decades." Can you imagine our roads, what they're going to look like if there's not any repaving done, or substantial repaving done for decades? We need a policy that we are recognizing that the infrastructure and improving and maintaining our infrastructure is critical to Asheville. It's critical to our safety, and it's critical to our being and staying a beautiful place. I have a special concern about the new system for fall leaf pickup. There was an article in the paper yesterday in that regard. I won't read you what the answer man said, but what the bottom line is that we have lost a lot of our capability to vacuum up the leaves around our city. And you go outside right now, and there's going to be a lot of leaves that are not going to be put in the plastic bags that our new policy requires. They're going to lay there, they're going to clog our drains, they're going to turn to dirt, and there'll be a wonderful place for weeds to grow all over the city. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about what seems to be the number of counterproductive traffic calming devices we have. For instance, I expressed some concern when I heard some concern in the Shiloh community about one on West Chapel in London, and contacted the city about that, and they are actually going to take that one out, because all it was doing was making the bus ride bumpy. It wasn't calming any traffic at all. We've got traffic calming devices on Kimberly, where if you are heading south and you're on a bicycle, you got a problem. North's fine. There are no calming devices there. Heading south, it's a big problem. We've got calming devices on Murdoch, where there's so much growth growing up that it's getting very difficult to see at those places. So those are my concerns about city policy related to traffic.
That's really what you elect us to do, is to form policy. And I think that's what we, as a council, we are a living body that changes those living policies. And frankly, there are some of the people have already mentioned that we've got some that need to be changed. Quite frankly, there are a lot of issues that we have to look at and say, well, we got a problem here, let's change that. As far as a blanket policy change, I don't have huge ones. I think that one of the things was mentioned just a moment ago, our street paving and resurfacing policy it's really an 80-year out. And that's an incredible thing. That happened because the Asheville was busy years ago paying for a structural imbalance because we're not helped with the normal things like differential water rates for people outside the city, so we were not able to do some of those things. We had to pay off bonds. So unfortunately, we got set up in a situation where we're not moving things probably quickly forward as we should be in street paving. But we're in a down economy, and it's very apparent that no one really wants to see taxes changed, but we want to see things improve. So I think it all depends on getting the partnerships and developing policy around what we can actually do and implement the things that we recognize as bad. And frankly, there are a lot of opportunities that we see on council all the time, and there just may be more issues to it than sounds simple. It sounds simple to go to TDA and ask for tourism dollars. Frankly, it's not a lot of money, and it can't be used to do everything, but we need to take a look at a combination of things that we can do to change our revenue stream and to affect policy changes that make a difference in people's lives. And other than that, we do a pretty good job with the dollars we've got to work with. And I think most people here will agree it's a great place to live. I think leaf pickup is something we're going to have to revisit. That will make it a change.
So my observation in our city right now is that one of the most divisive issues we've got is around development. And so in my mind, that speaks to the fact that there's probably some work to be done there. I think that the City Council has made an effort to start to clarify some of the rules to make it clearer, but I think that there's tremendous amount of work to be done on the UDO in order to clarify the rules so that we all understand them. And I think that the recent planning and zoning appointments again sort of raised this flag for a lot of people that the process is possibly flawed, and it might be that we need to look at planning and zoning board, as, you know, we may want to look at the structure of that differently and maybe have a requirement for a broader type of representation on that board as they are going to be making decisions about development in our community. I think that through the planning that's gone on, our community has expressed a fairly strong common vision for what we want to see happen in the city. And so I think it's up to City Council to really work on ensuring that that happens without shutting out the voices of citizens and neighborhoods in that process. And so we have to figure out how to make that work smoothly. So that's something I would personally like to work on.
I'd like to touch briefly on 3 different areas that would be key areas of concern for me. First is planning, zoning, development. If we're successful improving our livability and attracting business, we will have population growth. I believe we can absorb population growth, maintain or improve our livability, improve our environmental integrity as we do it. That will require refining our zoning ordinance as we go forward. There's always evolution of that ordinance. You know, recently the results of the downtown master plan triggered some changes. There was the density bonus for affordable and sustainable development along transit corridors. So those are the kinds of incremental changes we can make. There's also talk about considering form-based, a major revision that would adapt to form-based code. So I think that we've got opportunity, and we need to pay attention to our planning ordinance in order to assure that we grow in a positive way. Secondly, affordability of housing. I am disappointed that we have reduced our commitment to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund over the past couple of years. I think that our city is, with the recent economic downturn depressing property values as sort of a temporary exception, I believe our city is in the process of gentrifying and making itself unaffordable. I think that it requires a commitment to affordability. And finally, transportation infrastructure. Having walked around the city and visited lots of neighborhoods and gotten to know lots of people in all different corners, we've got some neighborhoods that are segmented off by generally major DOT projects like Tunnel Road or Patton Avenue, that isolate neighborhoods, and they're less vibrant and less critical than they could be. And there's a real differential there. So I think being more focused on how our transportation infrastructure goes in partnership with state DOT is an area that I think needs policy emphasis. Thank you.
Looking at, the question is, what city policies might I consider revisiting? There's a couple big ones, or a couple little ones, and a couple not so little ones as well too. The downtown master plan, it was a good process. It involved a lot of people participating in that. But one of the outcomes was that level 3 developments, that's up to 175,000 square feet. That's about the size of the BB&T building. That can be approved at the planning and zoning level. Planning and zoning is not elected by you. They're appointed by council. I really feel like there's going to be problems with that decision down the road because of the lack of accountability from the people that are making those decisions. So that's one thing that we may want to revisit. The other is kind of a smaller thing, but I think symptomatic of the kind of an attitude downtown. If you go to the city's website right now, they've got drop-down tabs for all the major departments and kind of issues there. There's a drop-down tab for living. And in there, it's housing and neighborhoods. And if you go in that, they have about 4 or 5 subjects on housing, public housing, various housing. There's not word one on neighborhoods. There's nothing about what the historic neighborhoods are, who the police resource officers are for neighborhood, who the city planners are for neighborhood, who the neighborhood associations are. There's nothing. And to me, that indicates that the city has sort of a dysfunctional relationship with neighborhoods. That's something I can help bring to council. Having worked in neighborhoods and bringing people together and articulating a vision. The third thing, and I think it's a big one, is priorities. The priorities, downtown is important to our community. It's the economic engine that brings people here. We recognize that. But why can't we have neighborhoods that are as pedestrian friendly as our downtown? Right now, you see the goat trail. Go out Lester Highway, there's a goat trail from folks carrying groceries from Ingalls to the apartments out there. Hendersonville Road has been petitioning since 1997 sidewalks. There's places all over the community, Lakeshore Drive, folks want to walk there. We need to make neighborhoods a greater priority, and I'll do that on council.
All right, now is the opportunity for each of the candidates to have 2 minutes to make a closing statement or summarize their previous statements. And we'll start with Mr. Cates and go.
My mom taught me everything in moderation. And I think that's something that we all probably learned. Everything in moderation. Right now, we have a progressive city council that has endorsed 3 progressive candidates. We have progressive organizations around the city that have endorsed those same candidates. We need balance on the city council. We absolutely need balance. Anytime we go too far in one direction, it's not good for everyone. Everybody needs a voice. Everybody needs a seat at the table. We have President Obama, who was here this week, and he said, jobs now. We all need to get behind that. It's jobs before anything.
I share Mr. Kelly's concern about the neighborhoods. I'm running because I rode my bike around the city, enjoyed riding my bike around the city. I have an opportunity to do that. And it was the neighborhoods where it was the worst. I'm very concerned that we do what we can to improve the neighborhoods. And right now, I'm going to recommend that you vote for me for city council. And because of his concern about the neighborhoods and his good work that he has done in regard to creating sidewalks for our area, I'm also going to suggest that you vote for Mr. Kelly. I have this sheet here, which has the problems that I've talked about, but also offers solutions. The most important thing that you can get from your new city council, or 3 new members of the city council, are new and fresh ideas that are going to make Asheville better. I hope that after you have assessed what we have done here, and I think you should, I've been very impressed with what everyone has said. We've done about 9 of these, I think I've counted. And believe me, we're getting better at it as we go along. But it has been a pleasure to work with and to listen to all of the candidates, and I think they all have something to offer. But what I have to offer is this, that Asheville has a serious problem. We need to recognize that we need to invest in our streets and sidewalks. I'm running for city council because we cannot, in good conscience, continue to let the streets and sidewalks of Asheville continue to deteriorate. Our great city deserves better than that. Thank you.
I agree with Saul. I think we're getting where we can probably do each other's little spiel about as good as the other. But I'm running for council again after 8 years, and probably should be more efficient, and y'all may make me do that. But the realities are I've had some good successes on council and being able to achieve some projects that I felt were important, some things that I'm very involved in right at the moment. I've been was instrumental in forming the Asheville Area Riverfront Redevelopment Commission, and I sit on that commission. And we have a group of excited people, property owners, representatives of other governments, and 9 of us are sitting there as board members that are very invested in putting the infrastructure and ground to make that an economic developer. That is our next frontier, and I'm very, very strongly committed to it. Affordable housing, workforce housing is something I'm very committed to. I've been involved with the HCD Committee of Council that allocates the funding for that. And I've come over the last several years to recognize that our homeless issues and affordability are very, very important to this community, and the riverfront gives us an opportunity to get mixed income levels living together, which it raises people's socioeconomic situation rather than just stratifying. And I think that's very important. I'd like to see that come through. I also would like to see us do some things that, again, these partnerships to where that we can develop the revenue streams that are important to us. I've been a good listening ear on the council, been a very good centrist member of council. I'd like to represent that part of the community. I need to hear your voices. And I've been endorsed, I'm a Democrat, been endorsed by Mayor Bellamy, been endorsed by Brownie Newman and Esther and the Asheville Firefighters Association. And I'd like to sit up there and work with them again to see some more of these things come to fruition. I think we've done a good job in a time when Topeka, Kansas had its streetlights repossessed, so we have done a pretty nice job.
I've accomplished quite a lot in my career. In my current role at the Asheville JCC, I helped to develop a very unique values-based curriculum for early childhood education that has received national recognition, and I've been traveling around the country to train other early childhood educators in how to use and implement this curriculum in their programs. I've also been a successful small business owner, having owned and operated a print and graphic design business in Miami for a number of years, as well as opening and owning and running Sweet Heaven Ice Cream Music Cafe here for 5 years. I have experience also working as a corporate marketing executive where I was responsible for managing a $1 million budget for a software company. So all of these professional experiences, I think, have laid the foundation for me in the type of work that's going to be involved in being in City Council. At the same time, since I've lived here, I moved here in 2001, I have become extremely involved in community service. I've been serving on numerous boards and committees around issues of education. I've been on the board of Smart Start Buncombe County for about 5.5 years. I've also served on the board of directors for Building Bridges of Asheville, as well as being a facilitator there. And I've been on other numerous committees. I helped to form the I-26 Connect Us project, which was a group that formed around the I-26 connector and advocating on behalf of all neighborhoods, meeting with the DOT and elected officials. It just kind of goes on. And I've done all of this while also raising my 2 lovely daughters who are smart and successful and wonderful and beautiful. And I wish that they were here tonight so you could see them. I think that speaks to my ability to do many things quite well. And it also speaks to my commitment to our community. And I just have to say that I love Asheville. And when I look at Asheville, it's hard for me to see fault because I think it's so awesome here. So I hope that you will vote for me.
I decided to pursue a seat on City Council after years of working closely with and advocating with members of council and other levels of government, advocating for some things, and I finally came to see that that we need people in public office elected to really get things done. So that's my motivation. In regard to the work of City Council, most of the work is relatively unglamorous. It's a lot of decisions that bore people to watch go by, and there are the occasional sizzly ones that we get dust stuff over and all. And I'm ready for all of that. But I would reflect on the opening statement. You know, the functionality of City Council, the ability of council to work together among the members and as a unit to have vision, strategic, looking forward to achieve things for the future and not just react to whatever the issues of the day are is really key. I'm committed to that. Collaboration with others in the community, other levels of government is really critical. And the ability to look at issues and break them down and understand financial ramifications and be fiscally diligent is critical as well. And those are focuses of mine that extend, again, well beyond the policy level. I would ask you to vote for me, elect me, and once I'm in office, judge not just me and my performance, but how council has done as a whole to move our city forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple different surveys have asked us, so where are you, candidate A, on the political continuum? And it sort of made me think about it a little bit, but ultimately where I came down was I see myself as a pragmatic progressive, in that I'm about dealing with the issues that are facing our community, looking for opportunities for improvement, and then making it happen. I agree with Mark that the ability to be collegial and work together is important, and I think I've demonstrated that in my work in the community, but I also think you need to bring a point of view to council. You need to have a reason to go onto council. What are you going to do individually to help make the situation better in the community here? And I've talked to you about the work that I've done in my community, I've told you about how my professional experience informs my work. I've told you how I've led successful collaborations resulting in parks and sidewalks and other improvements. And I've told you how my Neighborhoods United focus is about bringing people together to craft solutions, bringing the public involved, making the public involved in the process, and not just from up on high, but working together with the community to create solutions. But there's still folks in this room that probably don't know me, that may not have worked with me, may not have interacted with me. But what I would tell you is the best measure, I believe, of what somebody's going to do in the future is to look at what they've done in the past, look at what they've accomplished. And I've served my community, and I feel like I've led the effort to really make some positive improvements, and that's what I want to do in council too. Thank you.
In the survey packet that was passed out as you came in, one candidate's answers to question 1 through 4 were accidentally omitted. They can be picked up as you leave just outside the door. In closing, we would like to extend our appreciation for our candidates' participation. A special thanks to Judith Ford, special thanks to Judith Hoy, Jan Schultz, and their committee for planning our forum this evening. Please stop by our membership and voter tables for additional information. Also, join us on our website, Twitter, Facebook sites for online information. We thank you so much for attending our forum this evening. Thank you.
This has been the 2011 Asheville City Council Candidate Forum, presented by the Asheville-Buncombe County League of Women Voters. Election day for Asheville is November 8th. Early voting and same-day registration run October 20th through November 5th. To learn more about the Asheville-Buncombe County League of Women Voters, please visit ablwv.org. To learn more about this year's candidates, please visit ncvoterguide.org.